Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And we're back. I've heard the name Rabbi Raphael Shore. People said you have to speak to him, you got to interview him. And for some reason, we never connected until today. But he's not only a rabbi, he's a human rights activist, filmmaker, lifelong educational entrepreneur. He founded OpenDor Media and the Clarion Project. He's played a role in shaping meaningful discourse about Jewish identity, anti-Semitism, radical Islam, resilience of Israel. He's made 18 documentaries and 500 educational videos. And he has award-winning films, including Beneath the Helmet, Obsession, and The Third Jihad. They've been viewed over 150 million times. His most recent projects include the documentary Tragic Awakening, A New Look at the World's Oldest Hatred, and the book Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? So who's afraid of the big bad Jew? I think people are not afraid anymore. That's the problem, right, Rabbi?
Well, I agree. First of all, thank you for having me on your show, Zev. It's a pleasure. And, they're not afraid of us in the sense of they're not afraid of being anti-Semitic. But my insight in the book and my film is that it's fear more than hate that drives anti-Semitism. So I believe that a huge percentage of the global population has a fear, which is why we see an explosion of anti-Semitism. They're afraid of the incredible, powerful influence of the Jewish people, which is different than most prejudices, and it's very interesting.
But here's the thing, though. It used to be post-Holocaust, people were embarrassed to say an anti-Semite. The expression was, my best friend is Jewish, or have somebody who's Jewish. So people were not going publicly. Today, post-October 7th, you have people not embarrassed to say, I'm anti-Semitic, but they guise it in the form of being anti-Israel. I can show you letters that I have, and people write with their name, address, phone number, email address, say, I hate Israel. I have such an email that I got recently. They're not embarrassed anymore to say, I hate Jews, I hate Israel.
Well, the great line that I have in my film, and you hear it all the time, is I'm not against the Jews. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just against genocide. All right, and they're okay. They're in the clear. It's an incredible phenomenon that you're mentioning. And my understanding is that throughout history, it's a pattern that after Holocaust type event, which we've experienced so many times in the last 2,000 years of our history, there is a pause. There is a couple of generations where the world is so guilty that you can't be that kind of anti-Semite that preceded it anymore. It was not cool to be a neo-Nazi or a racist. And therefore, it takes time to A, get over the guilt, and B, redefine anti-Semitism, create a new shape for it to morph into a new phenomena that we perhaps haven't seen before. And it always is based on the society's number one values. So today, it took 70, 80 years post-Holocaust, but anti-Semitism has successfully morphed into a human rights issue. And so they can be safe to be an anti-Semite because they're against genocide. They're against the persecution of an innocent people. So it's anti-Semitism in a new form. And it just takes time. That's why we've been okay for the last 50 years.
I know you're finding that and you're doing that through film. But here's the interesting part. What they're trying to do is make a differentiation between being anti-Jewish and being anti-Israel. It doesn't work because at the end of the day, all those that say they're anti-Israel, they end up talking about the Jews and attacking Jews who have nothing to do with Israel. I keep mentioning this Holocaust survivor in New York. I don't know if you're following the story, but there's a Holocaust survivor, 85 years old, who wanted to speak to a public school in Brooklyn, New York. And the principal said he cannot speak in the public school, even though he wasn't talking about Israel, talking about the Holocaust, because he's pro-Israel. She checked out his website. He loves Israel. So because of that, you can't do the Holocaust. You can't make this up.
You see it everywhere. They're trying to hide behind being only anti-Israel and just about human rights. But another piece of evidence, in addition to your anecdote, they just came out with a study, I think it was the New York Post, that like 60% of young Jews on college campuses feel that they themselves were blamed for Israel's actions. You know, I have a nephew who was at NYU when October 7th explosion of anti-Semitism happened. He lost all of his friends. He lost all of his professors were against him. He said a few words in support of Israel. He was done. And look, when Chinese students are not attacked day and night on campus because of what the Chinese government is doing to the Uyghurs and putting them in concentration camps in China. So there is a clear connection that people associate all Jews with Israel, and we see that it's just an excuse. And
Israel is a justifiable war, but the world doesn't want to buy it. You remind me of an old joke about a Jewish guy who's walking down the street, and a fellow starts beating him up, and he goes, "Why are you beating me up?" He goes, "You killed our Lord." Killed your Lord? That was 2,000 years ago. And he goes, "I just found out about it this morning." You know, so
Yeah.
there's no, people just love to hate. But the truth is, Israel has not done a great job in explaining why it's not genocide. If you have genocide, they're providing food. And even now, Hamas is back in control. They're getting rich with tariffs on the food that Israel's allowing to come in. They're stealing it. They're putting tariffs on it. And the world says nothing. Israel's genocide. So if there's genocide, why are so many people alive in Gaza if they're looking to kill the Palestinians? Why is so much food being allowed in? But the world is very selective, and genocide is a great term that they can just throw about. They have no idea what it means.
Right. And you've raised a very important point. This war that was imposed upon Israel is also a global war against Israel. In the same way that we look at the Holocaust today, and we know that the Nazis didn't do it alone. The Nazis were the entrepreneurs of it, but without Britain stopping Jews from going to Israel and the rest of the world stopping Jews from leaving Europe, and the not bombing the railways and things like that, it wouldn't have happened. It was a global effort that was led by the Nazis. Today also, it's a global effort led by Iran and Hamas. But the fact that everybody's supporting Hamas, the fact that the entire academic establishment has come against us, and global countries are recognizing Palestinian state in this situation, it's once again an attempt. Jews, stop defending yourselves. Let yourself be killed. Let them destroy you. And so I look at it as not just Israel versus Hamas. It's Israel versus the entire radical Islamist world, as well as to a large degree the Western world. Thank God for Trump. He's had our backs, but shy of that, it's been miserable.
Right. So I know you're trying to change this. Tell us about your efforts where you're getting to change the narrative, and I know using film as a great vehicle to do so.
Yeah, so as you said, I've made 18 feature-length documentary films. I look at it, Zev, as I don't look at our number one priority is fighting anti-Semitism. Of course, we need to, but the Jewish world is investing hundreds of millions of dollars every year into fighting anti-Semitism, combating anti-Semitism, many organizations. And what's happened? Anti-Semitism has skyrocketed. So to me, that's not the priority area that we should be putting our efforts. To me, the priority area is keeping Jews Jewish. I believe that there's a straight line from the pressure that young Jews feel, the anti-Israel pressures, the anti-Jewish pressures that are felt by young Jews on campus and in high schools, straight line from there to assimilation. And our most important task as a mature Jewish people is to keep our Jews proud. In order to do that, they need moral self-confidence. They need to understand. And that's why I wrote my book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew, to give Jews moral self-confidence, to see the anti-Semitism, to be able to see the double standards, understand the obsession is their problem. And then a second step, flip it on its head and see that actually Jew hatred is a compliment. They're always obsessed with the Jews. Evil always comes after the Jews. And the deeper reason, as articulated and I explained in my book by Adolf Hitler and the Torah, is the same. Is that it's a fight, it's a spiritual, ideological battle against the Jewish people who are leading the fight to bring Judeo-Christian values, Jewish values into the world. And the enemies are always going to be there, but we have to continue bringing light in. And if we know our mission, and if we can keep our young generation strong, to me, that's the priority.
Well, there's no question that the propaganda against Israel, the one that has the most serious effect, is on Jews and young Jews. Look at how many of them have belonged to groups and demonstrate against Israel, not knowing all the facts. They don't have the Jewish education to know what Israel's all about and what the true facts are in the Middle East, and what from the river to the sea, what they're really calling for is the elimination of Israel. It doesn't cross their minds because they're not educated in that, in Jewishly.
Right, and that's why, to me, this is my life effort. And in addition to this recent film and my book, I founded OpenDor Media, which on YouTube is Unpacked, and podcasts under Unpacked name. And we're the largest education media company, and we're reaching young Jews with the education where they are at, telling them about the history of Israel, the history of the Jewish people, Judaism. And to me, that's where our focus should be. And there's not enough happening there. Unfortunately, we haven't done the greatest job, we, the Jewish generation, in educating the next generation.
Our guest is Rabbi Raphael Shore, acclaimed human rights activist, filmmaker, lifelong educational entrepreneur. As you heard, he founded OpenDor Media. His new movie is called Tragic Awakening, a new look at the world's oldest hatred. It's based on his book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Learning to Love the Lessons of Jew Hatred. Let's get personal. I know you're originally from the United States. What made you decide to embark on this project? You're not originally from the United States?
No, I'm from the 51st state. I'm from Canada.
Canada. Okay, fine. For some reason, I didn't pick up the Canadian accent. Okay, now I pick it up.
Well, I married a New Yorker, a woman from New Rochelle, New York, and I've been in Israel for 40 years. But I'm a proud Canadian, but at the same time, I know we're the same as Americans. So my story began. I grew up in a relatively small town in Canada, and not a religious background, but I had a strong Jewish identity. My parents were involved fighting Soviet Jewry, UJA Federation.
When you say Jewish identity, what does that mean? You had Friday night dinners. You had
no, not too religious. That's too religious. Not too much synagogue, but Hebrew school. And then I would say the main identity factor was summer camps, Jewish summer camps, which were Zionist, secular Zionist summer camps.
Bar mitzvah, no?
Young Judea. I had a bar mitzvah. I was Jewish, but we just, that was the world that I grew up in. And there was 20 Jews out of 1,000 in my public school. So I knew we were a little different, and at the same time, we were pretty much the same. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of high school, I described this story in my book. All of a sudden, we came to the usual Friday night party, and it said, "No Jews allowed." And
they actually said no Jews allowed at the party?
No Jews allowed.
Where was this?
Our friends.
At a friend's house?
Yeah. Every week there'd be a party at different friends' houses.
And he knew you were Jewish?
They knew we were Jewish. It was like 3 or 4 of us. All of a sudden, no Jews allowed. And these were our friends. This was our social group. It was led by my girlfriend's brother. And after a while, they let us in, and they kept taunting us as Jews. And it was wild. My other
Isn't that crazy? They were friends of yours, and all of a sudden, no Jews allowed. Do you have ever find out what happened? What made them decide to do that?
No, I quickly switched high schools. I got out of there.
Hope you switched girlfriends too.
She was all right, actually. But in the end, it kind of provoked me to understand anti-Semitism more, because I thought, like, whoa, why can't we just be one of them? That's how I was living. There was something that they were perceiving about Jews that was deeply different. And so my twin brother, right after high school, ended up, after a trip to Israel, stumbling on Aish Torah, and he became religious. And then a couple years later, I came to find out what he was doing. Actually, I came to try to get him out because I thought it was a cult. And
did your parents set you up for that?
My parents wanted me to go, but they didn't want me to go for more than 3 weeks. They didn't want me to become religious, but they did want us to stay close. I have good parents.
But did they say stay away from Aish Torah?
They knew I was going to Aish Torah because they knew that he had gone to such a different worldview that if I didn't go, there would be a gap in our relationship. So they wanted me to go, but get out in 3 weeks. That's what they wanted. Get out in 3 weeks. Don't stay too long. But in the end, I was introduced to Judaism in a mature way, and I had a lousy Hebrew school experience. And so, wow, Judaism was relevant, meaningful, interesting. And so I ended up going that direction. So as soon as I finished university, I went and studied in yeshiva for 5 years. I became a rabbi. And then I spent 20 years working for Aish Torah. I was the COO of Aish International. And then after that, I started my own companies, OpenDor Media and Clarion Project, to continue on this path of trying to help the Jewish people and educate the Jewish people.
So what did your parents say when not only didn't you stay for 3 weeks, but you turned out like your brother? What did they? What was their reaction?
They were upset. Yeah, they were upset.
Did they check their mezuzahs? So they didn't have any mezuzahs.
That's a good one. That's a good one. No, they were very upset. But when I decided to honor my commitment and come back and finish university, the 614th commandments, thou shalt finish university. So once I did that, that appeased them. And they were okay with me then moving to Israel and becoming religious. And subsequently, they understood much more about Judaism as we were on our journey. And they were incredibly supportive in every way.
Did they become more observant because of you and your
brother? They
became
more observant. They didn't become Shomer Shabbos, but they started a kosher home, and they were very supportive and very involved. My wife's family, too, the same, very similar story. And my wife's parents ended up making Aliyah and moving to Israel and being close to us as well. So yeah, it happens.
You have any other siblings?
I have a third sibling, in addition to my twin, who's also in Israel and also helping the Jewish people in many ways. The oldest one, is in Hollywood, successful Hollywood TV writer. He did the TV show House and The Good Doctor. He's the creator.
There was a Jewish scene in there too. I remember a religious family.
Yes, he's put in many scenes, and he didn't become religious. But he was challenged by it. Yes. Okay. But he was challenged by it all. And the moral conflicts, the moral dilemmas is very much a theme in his shows. And he's done many shows that relate to the Jewish questions and Jewish issues, and always done in a positive, sensitive way. He's pro-Israel. He's strongly pro-Israel. He stood up for Israel after October 7th.
Not too many people in Hollywood did that. It's very unfashionable to be pro-Israel in Hollywood these days.
100%. He stuck his neck out, and it was his son that I mentioned was at NYU who had a horrendous experience.
Wow. Now, has he visited you in Israel?
Many times.
So did you take him to
even brought what?
Did you take him to
At the beginning he came. But he actually brought the cast of House, the TV show. He brought them to Israel.
Very nice. We need more voices in Hollywood. There's a movement of Hollywood people to have Barghouti released from prison. I don't know if you saw that. That's a new campaign I saw this week. It's getting worse by the day, where they're picking these terrorists and want to glorify them and pressure Israel to do the worst things no other nation would do, these things that would be destructive to their national basis. But yet they're demanding it of Israel.
Trying to stop Jews. I say in the book and my film is that anti-Semitism in every generation is trying to stop Jews from being Jewish, and whether it's Christians trying to force convert us today, they're forcing Jews to abandon Israel, and young Jews have to check their Judaism and their pro-Israelness at the door if they want to be part of the liberal society. It's the same theme throughout history to try to get us to back away from being Jewish and the Jewish people. And it's we're at a moment of time that it's very difficult, which is why we need to help young Jews have a backbone and moral clarity to see through the absurd situation that we're living in.
Now you founded OpenDor Media, the Clarion Project. You make movies. Movies are expensive unless your brother's doing it for you. So who's funding you?
Thank God we are a growing organization. OpenDor Media is supported by a lot of caring Jews. We're a large organization. We've been growing tremendously. We have 70 plus people working for us now. Wow. And basically, we introduced the idea of media-based education, film-based and media-based education, before YouTube even existed. And so we were ahead of the curve, a little bit prescient, thank God. And it takes a lot, as you say, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of money and a lot of skill to get the product right and get the education right. So we've been at it for close to 20 years. And so when people, especially after October 7th and COVID, they understand the importance of digital education, and they understand the war that's going on for hearts and minds, we've been in a leadership position. So Unpacked has gotten much more support, and we've been able to expand our efforts with the help of many generous philanthropists.
So you're philanthropist based, or is it grassroots based? Is it both?
Mostly philanthropy, the hard work of fundraising.
I know it's
That's
hard.
why I'm here in New York. I have
fundraising. Okay, you're wearing your fundraising cap now.
If anybody would like to support, they can go to OpenDor Media, and you can click there and support us.
But door is spelled with one O, not two O's.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Any chance of a Hollywood fundraiser? Your brother get some Hollywood people involved?
He's done an event at his home to introduce us to friends and people. A few weeks ago, at the beginning of my trip, we did a live podcast of our show. We had 500 people in audience. We had Ronen Bergman, and a few weeks before that, we did a live podcast actually at 92nd Street Y. And we had 900 people there for that one. Yeah, so we're thank God we have a lot of.
The reason why I mentioned it, I'm saying it tongue in cheek, but I think it's important to try to get some of these Hollywood types to be behind these kinds of projects. There has to be some Jews in Hollywood that have not gone off to the dark side and against their people that support Israel. Used to be the case in Hollywood. There were always some people that stood out. That's why I'm wondering if there are others aside from your brother. And I know Ilana Wernick, who's a producer who started out working for Talkline. She's been excellent also trying to get support for Israel during the October 7 period. But is there more? And they should be get them to star in some of your movies too.
Yeah, it's a good idea. There's not too many who are willing to stick their neck out in a deep way because they know that there's very serious consequences for doing so, especially for actors and actresses. They're going to get canceled. And so there's not enough.
Did your brother get any blowback for helping you?
He did. He said post October 7th, his experience as a leader in the Writers Guild was the worst experience he's had in his life. Because Writers Guild would always support the underdog. They would always support the oppressed, the people who needed support. And then all of a sudden, when the Jews needed a little support, the Writers Guild did not back them. They wouldn't come out with a statement. He was completely shocked. And this helped him. This helped strengthen his Jewish commitment in the same way that so many October 8th Jews did. And that began the Jews of the Writers Guild, which are a third of Writers Guild is Jewish writers. And for the first time, they had to start organizing themselves and communicating within themselves. And that we've seen all over the place as a commonality, which is part of God's secret plan when these terrible things happen, that it helps bring us together as a Jewish family and know that we love each other and we're here for each other. And ultimately, Israel is our home and we are a family.
What's your next project going to be?
I'm actually starting 2 new books. One is on Jewish self-hate, which is one of the most common questions that I get asked. What you mentioned it earlier. What about these Jews who go to the dark side?
It may take you years to write. It's going to be, unfortunately, a very big book.
Sadly, it's growing by the day. No, it's terrible.
I can introduce to some of these people. Okay.
Yeah. But I take an empathic view to it because I think it's a product of multi-generational trauma. Like we've been, our psyche has been messed with after 2,000 years of persecution. And if we don't educate ourselves properly, so then it's difficult for young Jews to stand on the right side of history. And then the second book that I'm working on is a book about how Judaism is a success model for life. That there is a model there. If you apply Jewish principles, anybody, religious or not, can have the basic formula to navigate life with all of its difficult challenges today in a very successful way, meaningful and successful way. So I'm going to start to put that together too.
No, it sounds marvelous. And the truth is that the biggest challenge we have in the world, and especially in America, is the lack of Jewish education. If more Jews were to be educated, not the Hebrew school, I think the Hebrew school is pretty much out the window these days. I don't know how successful they are or how many of them are out there, but a lot of Jews are not getting a basic Jewish education. I believe that philanthropy has to get more involved in making affordable yeshiva education. As the public schools become worse, as become more anti-Semitic, there's more of an opportunity for Jewish kids to want to go to a Jewish school. And that's, I think, we have to make it affordable.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And in Israel, they're making new one-year programs and graduate whole. You can get more degrees now in English in Israel, in Israeli universities, and that's also the idea of OpenDor Media, is that we're educating kids online where they are. So even if they're not being sent to a good Jewish school, they can get a really strong education by going to these platforms like YouTube and podcasts.
Are you similar, or is PragerU similar to what you're doing?
PragerU is similar, but PragerU is not Jewish per se. PragerU is like conservative, American conservative politics that sometimes touches on Israel and Jewish. We are kulo, everything about Jewish and Israel. That's our whole thing. But aside from that, similar idea that we create these 15-minute videos that encapsulate in an entertaining way a very important chapter in Israel history or a subject in Judaism.
No, your films are great. So I just saw Tragic Awakening. Any chance, or have any of them been or going to be on Netflix and some of the other streaming platforms?
Yeah, several of my films have been on streaming platforms. The biggest one was Obsession: Radical Islam's War Against the West. It was also featured on Fox News a dozen times, prime time. This film, Tragic Awakening, right now you have to go to the website, tragicawakening.com, and you can arrange screenings in your communities. And we've done film festivals. We've shown it at Congress. But soon it will be released on Amazon Prime. In about 2 months' time, it'll be available on Amazon Prime.
Is Netflix a lot more difficult? Because I speak to other independent Jewish filmmakers, and they can get on Prime and other streaming services. But for Netflix, it seems a lot more complicated. And I'm wondering if they're going to become bigger with the acquisition of Warner, if that's going to make it even tougher for independent Jewish filmmakers such as yourself to get on there.
Yeah, it became more difficult for all independent filmmakers, but certainly when you're putting out a positive message about Israel and the Jewish people, it becomes harder. But what happened was that in the earlier years of Netflix, we had several of our films that were taken by them, and they made a deal, a licensing deal. They gave us money, but then they decided, they came to the clarity about 10 plus years ago that financially they're in a better position by producing their own stuff. So Netflix became the biggest production house, bigger than Fox, bigger than Warner, and so then they had less reason to take on independent films. So they take very few independent films, and when they do, certainly then you get the politically correct questions and whatnot. You know, if I was doing anti-Israel films or showing about Jewish people going away from Torah, away from Judaism, or about if it was based on, you know, liberal crazy ideas and whatnot, woke ideas, then I'd probably have a chance. But I'm producing pro-Israel, pro-Jewish stories, and that becomes difficult. Not impossible, but very difficult in today's environment. So we go our own way. We go our own way.
No, I understand. Netflix is the biggest, and with this merger, if it takes place, will become the biggest player in town. It would just seem there should be some way to have more independent Jewish films such as yourself be part of that Netflix experience. And I've seen some of the stuff on Netflix, and as you said, anti-Orthodox, even they have Orthodox in the title, doesn't mean anything. It would be nice to see. So if we can be any help on that, that's something which maybe while they're going through this process of trying to get approval, maybe this could be part of the equation. It should be brought up. Thinking out loud.
I will try my best. I appreciate it.
Anyway, Rabbi Raphael Shore, thank you for being here with us. Let's give out the information for people to check out some of your work again.
So yeah, you can check me out, and everything comes under raphaelshore.com, PH. You can find out about all 18 films and where you can watch them. And specifically tragicawakening.com to find out about this particular movie. You can get the book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew, at Amazon, and find out more information also at my website.
Rabbi Raphael Shore, acclaimed human rights activist, filmmaker, rabbi, lifelong educational entrepreneur. His company is OpenDor Media. Thank you for being part of our show. Look forward to having you back again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0740. 0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Love the British